So this weekend, Paddy Pimblett takes on Justin Gaethje for the UFC Interim lightweight title on the UFC's first card of 2026. So in this video, I'm going to preview that fight, predict a couple of the others from this card, and then I want to take a look at how Paddy's career has got to this point. It's almost as if it was manifested. He was guided perfectly to this interim title shot. Everything had to go to plan for Paddy to get him into this position, almost as if it was predestined. But can he make it over the finish line by beating Justin Gaethje? Hello guys, and welcome back to Alex on MMA. Hope you're all doing well and you're ready for the return of the UFC. I know I am. Just before we get into this video, I do want to give you a little update about the structure of the channel moving forward. I think I just want to keep it super simple so I can stay consistent with it. On Thursdays, we're going to be having a preview show to the weekend's events and then a recap on the Monday. I will be doing some fighter interviews in between and things like that. But if you are interested in this kind of regular format, make sure you do subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and let me know who you think wins this fight this weekend. Anyway, on to the main event. So we've got Paddy Pimblett facing Justin Gaethje. And whatever you think about whether this fight is deserved or not, if Arman has been wrongfully overlooked, this is the fight that we've got. And it is an absolute banger. Both fighters are always in exciting fights. I mean, maybe the Jared Gordon fight for Paddy Pimblett is the exception where it was a bit lackluster. But other than that, both of these guys come out swinging and always guarantee excitement. But before we get onto the breakdown itself, I do want to talk a little bit about Paddy's route to getting here. How it feels like this is a destined moment from his Cage Warriors career where he turned down joining the UFC twice because he personally didn't feel as though he was ready for the step up. And that kind of decision making is a real rarity in mixed martial arts, because I'm sure you think that when you are given the opportunity to fight for the UFC, that kind of opportunity might not come around again. However, Paddy Pimblett and his team, Graham Boylan, who runs Cage Warriors in the UK, they knew that they had something special with Paddy. They kept getting him more money over at Cage Warriors, building him up. He suffered a couple of losses, but they knew all along that just give this guy the platform, give him the opportunity when he's ready, and he'll make a real go at it. The interesting thing for me about Paddy is when he joined the UFC, he was much more of a novelty than a presumed title contender. If you remember his debut in the Apex where he got cracked with that massive left hook, saying Scousers don't get knocked out, and then everyone was wearing the wigs, he signed the deal with Barstool. At that point, for me, it seemed as though the UFC was kind of trying to work out what they'd got with Paddy Pimblett. Clearly a massive commercial success. You can just take a look at his Instagram following, the sponsorship deals he was getting. But really, behind the scenes, they were moving parts around, moving the chess pieces to orchestrate Paddy getting into this kind of position. And now I'm not even saying that as a criticism. I know you get labels like industry plant for fighters who get the easy route to the top. But ultimately, even if your route to a title shot isn't as difficult as somebody else's, you still have to win those fights. And that's what Paddy Pimblett's done in such a way that he's getting better with each fight, and he's beating these fan-friendly, well-known names that elevates his profile and makes this title shot all the more intriguing. You've got to think he's beaten King Green, Michael Chandler, who else has he beaten? Tony Ferguson, all on his journey to get to this title. And yes, these are definitely stepping stones. I'm not trying to make out as though these are fighters who are in their prime. They're all on losing skids. They were all past their very best. But Paddy still had to show that he was at that level of beating them, because we've seen it in the UFC, particularly the lightweight division, so many times in which fighters, the UFC are trying to push certain fighters, remove the old guard, and they come up short. You can think about Fiziev in the first fight, in particular against Gaethje. That was meant to be a passing of the torch moment, but Gaethje stopped him there. Benoit Saint-Denis against Dustin Poirier. Saint-Denis, another route to the French market, an up-and-coming fighter, a dangerous fighter. But Poirier showed that the old guard still held some status in that division. And although this fight is still kind of that, Paddy Pimblett, the younger guy against Justin Gaethje, who's meant to be the old guard, it's still a step up for Paddy. It's still a really intriguing fight. And it does feel as though Paddy was destined for this moment. From the moment he joined the UFC, fighting in the Apex, building up that profile, and then his route to the title. It might not have been the most difficult, and this one is a really interesting matchup. And the reason why I say that Paddy has been destined for this moment is because, yes, the path has been laid out for him on the one hand. the UFC's a business. They want to protect their commercial asset. They're not going to put him against Arman Tsarukyan if a title was not on the line necessarily. This interim title shot against Justin Gaethje makes a lot of commercial sense, particularly if you're looking forward to a potential matchup against Ilia Topuria. But ultimately, the UFC had this star, this superstar, who had a great personality, but they weren't too sure about his fighting ability. The path that they put him on has seen him both develop as a personality, he's much more well-known now, and develop as a fighter. That fight against Chandler showed me a lot more things from Paddy Pimblett. He looks really good at the weight, the way he was taking Chandler down at the end before getting the finish, and his stand-up looks a lot better now. So for me, this is a clear example of right place, right time, and there has to be a certain level of luck along the way. And for Paddy Pimblett, the biggest stroke of luck is unfortunately the absence of Ilia Topuria, because in my mind, he is probably pound for pound number 1 or 2 at the very worst. And I can't really see anyone beating him in that lightweight division. But due to his absence, and we might not see him until the summer, this opportunity has arisen for Paddy Pimblett, and it's up to him to seize it with both hands. That's not to say, as we move on to the fight breakdown itself, that I think this is going to be a walk in the park for Paddy Pimblett. I know that he's the bookie's favourite, but Justin Gaethje is still a very dangerous fighter. And it's a real contrast of styles, particularly in the stand-up, that I do want to pay a bit of attention to now. Because Justin Gaethje's stand-up, again, it's something that's evolved throughout the years since working with Trevor Whitman, he became a lot more cute on the feet, slightly less reckless. He still gets hit a hell of a lot. But there's one aspect of his game that I think will be really dangerous for Paddy Pimblett, and that's if they are both stood there, feet planted and swinging. This would not suit Paddy Pimblett at all. I know that he does rate his chin, but Justin Gaethje is really effective in those positions, not only with his leg kicks that he can land from incredibly short distances, but when he's in the pocket, his head movement's actually very good. He really dips his head off the centre line, throws in big hooks. Think about the fight against Charles Oliveira. He knocked Oliveira down with one of those. And he does like to move a lot, swinging big shots over the top when stood in the pocket. So I think for Paddy Pimblett's path to victory, or path to losing, Justin Gaethje's path to victory, Justin Gaethje really wants to get Paddy in a position where he's forced to exchange with him. That kind of scenario, I think at this point would really benefit Justin Gaethje. On the other hand, when you're looking at what Paddy Pimblett does well, what he does well with his striking is he likes to overwhelm his opposition. And I do see this as an area that is potentially a weakness for Justin Gaethje. That's one of the ways in which I'm seeing this fight unfolding. Paddy Pimblett, you think about his fight against Tony Ferguson, against Michael Chandler. Once he's cracked his opponent, he gets some kind of big reaction over them, he swarms forward. Against Michael Chandler, he landed a knee to his head. He had Chandler backtracking, and then he sprinted at him, flying knees, and it was similar against Tony Ferguson, although I think he landed a flying knee against Tony Ferguson. So rather than planting his feet, we want to see Paddy using his range. He's got good leg kicks. We saw that against King Green. And then once he lands something that has a demonstrable effect on his opponent, expect Paddy to move blitzing forward. And that's one of the ways in which I can see this fight unfolding. I'm expecting it to be a fairly cagey opening minute or two at the start. Both fighters feeling each other out. Justin will, just as I said, want to get Paddy in the position where he's forced to exchange with him. So maybe backing him up against the fence, landing those low kicks and then just swinging. Whereas Paddy, he needs the distance, he needs the range. Picking Justin off with leg kicks, and then once he lands a big shot, expect Paddy to be all over him. This is how I'm seeing the fight unfolding in my mind right now. And then when he's got Justin on his heels, I can see Paddy either attempting a takedown or just trying to get him to the ground with strikes. You'll notice that there's an absence of discussion about wrestling in this one. I don't think it's going to play a major factor. I think both fighters are going to be content standing with each other until the fight has to go there. And with that being said, I'm going to move on to my prediction for this main event, because I am seeing a Paddy Pimblett submission either in the second or third round. And I think it's going to come very much in the way in which I described then. I think Paddy's going to overwhelm Justin with volume. I think he'll do some good work on the outside. And then after clipping Justin, and let's face it, Justin, he's shown himself to be very durable throughout his career, but he does get hurt at the same time. And once Justin Gaethje is hurt, he's going to be on his heels, and Paddy will either take him down or force him to the ground with strikes. And then I can see a rear naked choke being locked up from Paddy Pimblett, either in the second or the third round. I don't see this one going to the championship rounds. And look, I could be wrong. Justin Gaethje, he's proven me wrong enough times, really. The head kick against Dustin Poirier, beating Fiziev twice when I doubted him both times if he still had it. He's still clearly an elite lightweight contender in the UFC, fighting quite rightly for his second interim title. But if you had to put a gun to my head, that's the way I see this main event unfolding. And it's going to be a cracking fight. And, you know, on Monday when we're recapping the fight, what's next? Really, it opens wide open the lightweight division, which is probably the best outcome for both Paddy and the UFC. Because if Justin wins, maybe that opens the door to a Conor McGregor return at the White House against Justin Gaethje. Is Conor even training? Could he still make lightweight? Who knows? But let's face it, with Ilya leaving the division, there are many possibilities we can discuss. Anyway, moving on. That's enough about the main event. Cracking fight between Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett. I do want to talk about the new co-main event, which is Sean O'Malley against Song Yadong. And this fight is intriguing for so many reasons. If we're going to start by talking about what's at stake for both fighters, for me, Song Yadong is an interesting one. We'll start with him. There are no real victories of his that make me think, wow, this guy's a future title holder. Yes, there was the controversy with Cejudo. He's fought Chito Vera. He's clearly a very good fighter, technical, explosive, strong. But there isn't that landmark victory, and this win, if he was to win against Sean O'Malley, this would be that victory for Song Yadong to propel him to potential title contendership. But with that being said, if he was to lose this fight, conversely, then I think that probably does relegate him from future title contender, at least for the time being. More so, he'd become that perennial top 10 fighter who's there or thereabouts, a tough outing for anyone, but not necessarily someone you'd think about for a title shot. Someone a bit like Mateusz Gamrot in the lightweight division. A tough fight for anyone. He'll keep you honest with what he offers, but can you see him holding a title? Probably not. On the other hand, what's at stake for Sean O'Malley? And as he acknowledges, this is an absolutely massive fight for Sean O'Malley, given the consequences potentially at stake. If he's to win this fight, then I think it's a pretty much no-brainer. They'll have the rematch between him and Petr Yan. That fight was extremely controversial. At the time, I did score it for Petr Yan. But now that the emphasis is a lot more on damage in the UFC, I might have to rewatch that one and see if I score it differently. All I remember from that one is Petr Yan consistently taking Sean O'Malley down, holding him down. O'Malley landed some good stuff on the feet, but so did Petr Yan. I'll need to rewatch that one. But anyway, I think if Sean O'Malley was to beat Song Yadong, then the only logical next conclusion is that he'd fight Petr Yan. Even though Umar Nurmagomedov is on this card as well, he's on the prelims. I think that tells you probably everything you need to know about where the UFC rank both of these bantamweights in terms of their priority. He's got a tough outing against Davison Figueiredo, but we'll speak about that next. So how do I see Sean O'Malley against Song Yadong going? Well, again, I feel as though this will probably be just a step too far for Song Yadong. I think that O'Malley will feel the pressure when he's in there. And the question is, how does he react to this? Because if you've seen his recent interviews, he seems to be playing it down quite a lot. Does that tell you the hunger has perhaps left him a bit after tasting UFC gold? I'm not too sure. I think he's just trying to take some pressure off him, saying what will be will be. He's clearly a very skilled fighter, very good striker. And I think we're going to learn a hell of a lot from both his walkout and the first minute of this fight to see where he is mentally. But I'm expecting him to keep his range, use that beautiful front kick through the middle, soften up Song Yadong, and then start going to work with his hands. Song Yadong, he's a very durable guy. I'm not too sure I can see him get knocked out by Sean O'Malley. I can probably see this one leaning towards a decision, 30-27 decision for Sean O'Malley. And then he's going to hop on the mic, call out Petr Yan for that rematch at the White House. Song Yadong's routes to victory. He could use his offensive wrestling. We've seen that work for him before. I'm not sure how much Sean O'Malley has been working on standing up after the Merab Dvalishvili fight. But either way, I think Sean needs to focus on what he does best. Don't be so worried about trying to get back up when you've been taken down. Try to keep things at range. Use your kicks. Use your weapons. We know that the UFC aren't putting much weight towards takedowns if you're not doing damage whilst you're doing them. So I think Sean O'Malley just needs to focus on his game, and I can see him coming away with a decision. Moving on to the third fight that I want to speak about on this card, and it's Arnold Allen against Gene Silva. Now, I'm seeing a lot of Arnold Allen slander online regarding this fight, and just because I'm British doesn't mean I'm going to be biased with this one. But I think for such a technically sound fighter, such a well-rounded fighter like Arnold Allen, against such a wild fighter like Gene Silva. I think that this fight is far too difficult to call to make somebody a clear favourite like they've made Gene Silva. I know that Silva possesses a hell of a lot of power. He was doing really well against Diego Lopez until he wasn't. But at the same time, Arnold Allen has put up consistently solid performances against some of the best fighters in the division. And although he doesn't have the excitement factor that Gene Silva has, I think that a few of the things that Arnold Allen can offer, such as his leg kicks, his jab, his distance control, he's got a very, very nice jab. I think they could keep Gene Silva quite honest and really disrupt that awkward rhythm. Look, if Gene Silva enters that flow and he's landing big hooks at will, it could be a fairly short night for Arnold Allen, no question. But I think if Allen is able to stick to his fundamentals, he could potentially eke out a split decision here. I don't think it's quite as clear-cut as people are making out, at least the bookmakers are making out. I am very hesitant, though, to make a prediction on this. I know that Arnold Allen's been injured. He's been out of the octagon for a while. Gene Silva coming off that knockout, it's not that quick a turnaround. It's a fairly quick turnaround, but they both seem like they're up for it. Guys, let me know, how do you see this one going? Do you think that I am being biased with Arnold Allen, or do you think that it's easily a Gene Silva win? Gene Silva, the more active fighter, the more powerful fighter. He's also got a great submission threat, as we saw against Bryce Mitchell. Excuse me. He's also got a submission threat, as we saw against Bryce Mitchell. But I'm really struggling to pick this one. Both guys are very good at what they do, but it's such a clash of styles. Who can impose their style on the fight? Does Arnold Allen have the ability to keep things at range, keep the jab away, keep the low kicks going? And can Gene Silva get into his flow where he's landing at will, being wild, landing the bigger shots? Let me know below. I'm not calling this one. Although if you had to push me, I'm going split decision to Arnold Allen. Finally, moving on to the fourth and final fight that we're going to be speaking about on this card. And it is the main event of the prelims, Umar Nurmagomedov against Deiveson Figueiredo. Now, for me, I think this is pretty much a given. I don't know about you. I do think that Deiveson Figueiredo's best days are behind him. He's still dangerous. You know, he's still got ability, a good grappler, but Umar's a superior grappler. A good striker, but Umar's just got more weapons. I can only see this fight going one way. Umar, does he come across as a finisher these days? Probably not. I think if you had to ask me, I'd go 30-27 to Umar Nurmagomedov. I think he'll be able to take Deiveson Figueiredo down at will, but I think that Figueiredo's grappling, his jiu-jitsu, might be enough just to stop the submission threat coming from Umar Nurmagomedov. But one thing that really impresses me about Umar is the fact that he's taken that loss to Merab and he's just going back in there. He's still being stylish and acrobatic with his striking, which I really like to see. He's got very good kicks, really good hip flexibility, so he can whip up that high kick from close range. And I just think it's going to be too much for Figueiredo. This could be one of Figueiredo's final fights. I think, look, if he loses this, they'll probably end up matching him against unranked bantamweights. It really is getting to that stage of his career. But fair play, Figueiredo's had a mega career so far. A multiple-time flyweight champion, never ducked anyone, went up to bantamweight, had a great run there. But I just think Umar's too much for him. And unfortunately for Umar, I don't think the UFC are going to place enough weight on this fight to give him the next title shot, particularly if they're looking at the White House, Piotr Jan, Sean O'Malley, that kind of thing. But anyway, guys, that's been the preview video for this weekend's card. The return of UFC, the first show on Paramount. Justin Gaethje against Paddy Pimblett for the interim lightweight title. Guys, let me know how you think this one goes down. Really intrigued. If you enjoyed this video, we're going to be recapping the event on Monday, so make sure you are subscribed. Look out for that, and I'll see you next time.